All right, so this is Deuteronomy 6. Now, this is the commandment, the statutes, and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God and your son and your son's son by keeping all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you in a land flowing with milk and honey. I'm just going to open this door. It's getting a little warm in here, is it not? I think they had the heat on earlier. It was a little cold. You certainly don't need it now. All this hot air coming from some source, I don't know. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You will teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And when the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of good things that you did not fill, and cisterns which you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, then take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve, and by his name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples who are around you. For the Lord your God is in your midst, is a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may go well with you, and that you may go in and take possession of the good land that the Lord swore to give to your forefathers, by thrusting out all your enemies from before you, as the Lord has promised. When your son asks you in time to come, what is the meaning of the testimonies and statutes and rules that the Lord your God has commanded you, then you shall say to your son, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and the Lord showed signs and wonders, and great and grievous, against Egypt and against Pharaoh and all his household before your eyes. And he brought us out from there that he might bring us and give us the land that he swore to our fathers. The Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, and for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as we are this day. And it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to do all this commandment before the Lord our God, as he commanded us. May God bless the reading of his word this afternoon. So this is Deuteronomy 6. What do you find interesting about Deuteronomy 6? Cody?
Yes. The thing that I found interesting is every time it talked about God, it was like the Lord your God, every single time. And I don't know if it was to make it more personal, to get you to think hey, he's talking
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It repeats that theme over and over and over. Uh, the, he's obviously doing it for a reason. What else, David?
I was just, this is just kind of a question. Aren't the first 5 books supposed to be written by Moses, right? So why in this one does he refer to himself as me and I? He does the first person, and all the other ones he's third person.
We don't know. God has told him that he's going to kill him. This is his last sermon. It may have 3 parts. There are statements where Moses is in the third person. At the end of 4, he does that. But this is all I this and I that. So it is interesting. I saw Rachel, and then
You mentioned, in one of the questions in the homework, it was talking about the oneness of Jesus. And when I first read through the passage, I was like, this talks nothing about the oneness of Jesus. It just says Lord your God or whatever. And there was the one verse of Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And I just thought it was interesting that in the midst of all this stuff where they're talking about this is what God wants you to do, this is what God wants you to do, it's the Lord is one.
what do you make of that? It seems very strange, does it not? Must be important. Tell me your name again.
Jacob.
Jacob.
Going off of what David said, isn't this like Moses? It's like a direct recording of what he told the people. So
Mm-hmm.
whereas the other books are not, it's more like a narrative.
That could explain. That's exactly right. Jeff.
Just going off of what Rachel said, I noticed that it said the Lord your God is one, but then immediately after that it gave us 3 ways to relate to that. So I thought it was interesting that it's sort of foreshadowing and trending a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Jackson.
It says the Lord your God is in the midst of you. He is a jealous God, and that's been a theme throughout all 5 of these books. Can you explain a little bit? We usually think about jealousy as a bad thing. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Jealousy can be a bad thing if someone's trying to harm your family and your jealousy is protective. That's a good thing. So rage in us can be a bad thing. When God, having been so greatly patient, rage can be a good thing for him. So I think it's using what's a bad thing in us much more developed to say that it's a good thing in him. But it's the same word, kana, el-kana, God, the jealous God. Do you know what Jews call this chapter? So this is called the Shema. And the reason it's called the Shema is because in Deuteronomy 6:4, this is what it says, and I'm just going to read it in Hebrew. Shema Israel. Can you hear the word Shema? So that's here. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And we're going to talk about what that means. And in fact, it's used in the New Testament. The Shema is alluded to in 1 Corinthians 8:4-6. Paul's understanding of Jesus in relation to Old Testament monotheism and what it means for us today. So, Deuteronomy says this is the commandment. So, in chapter 5, he's listed the 10 commandments, but now he's saying this is the commandment. These statutes, judgments, which Yahweh your God commanded me to teach you, so that you would do them in the land where you are crossing over to possess, in order that you would fear Yahweh your God, so that you would guard all his precepts and commandments, which I am commanding you, you and your son and your son's son, all the days of your life, in order that you may stretch out your days. So how do you live a long time in the land? This is how you live a long time in the land. Hear, O Israel, hear and guard them, do them, that it may be good for you, and that you may all become exceedingly great, just as Yahweh, God of your fathers, said to you, a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh is one. Now, if you see this written in the Hebrew Bible, this is the way it's written. So what's weird about, if I can remember how to do this. What's weird about that in terms of how it's written, just when you look at it?
The third word of the first line and the second word of the second line are the same.
Yeah. So this is the Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton is twice. Can you tell that these two letters are written bigger than the rest? So in Hebrew, this word is the word witness. And so it's like, this is supposed to be a witness to you. And this is the most sacred part of Jewish practice. And it's this part that's in blue, Hear, O Israel, and with these four words, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this word Shema is here. That's why they call it the Shema. And this word is, well, if I spelled it right, Israel, Shema Israel. This is YHWH, but you're not going to say that out loud. Instead, you're going to say Adonai, because you don't say this word out loud. The third commandment says, don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. They took that to mean don't say the name of the Lord your God at all. And so what they did is whenever they came to this in the text, they replaced it with the word Adonai. So Shema Israel, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh is one. Now, this word is called the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter word. It's God's most sacred name. And in our English Bibles, whenever you have the Tetragrammaton written, they'll put the word Lord, but they'll put it in all caps like that. Are you with me? So whenever you're reading and you come to capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, they're telling you that in the Hebrew text, what you have is a tetragrammaton. And since you replace the tetragrammaton with Adonai, that seems like a nice translation surrogate. Moses says, once you admit the oneness of God, then the next most important thing is that you will love Yahweh, your Elohim. You will agape Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. In other words, God is one, and God requires from you ultimate love, ultimate authority. Help me with that. What seems weird about that to you, or does that seem weird, or David?
By definition of what we are, God is the only one who can do that. We can't do that.
Yeah, we can't demand that someone else love us with everything, but why should we love God with everything we have? Why can God make that demand on every one of us? He created us. He designed. Your body was designed by God. He holds the molecules of your body together. Your existence is happening because all through your body, electricity is going through your nerves. That's God's electricity. It's God's blood. It's God's muscle. It's God's brain. It's God time-space continuum. It's God's earth. It's God's chair. It's God's air. It's God's water. It's God's other people around you. It's God's mother and father. It's God's house that he gave you. God has rights over you because he made you, because he created you, because of all that. And that's one reason. And the other reason is because God is the most worthy thing to be loved in the universe. And God is a God of truth. And if you love something that's not God, you're lying because you're saying something else is more valuable than God. And so the Shema is just saying God is it. God eternally exists. God is your God, and so the requirement is you love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Now, let me just ask a candid question. Do you love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might? Like when you wake up in the morning, like the first thought in your brain is, how can I love God better? When you walk down the hall, are you just heart on fire with the desire to respond to God rightly? We would like to say yes. I think if I was honest, I've never loved God like that, not even 1 second in my entire life. I've felt fond affection for God, but in terms of loving God with every bit of my heart, loving God with every bit of my soul, loving God with every bit of my might, I've never done that, not even 1 second in my life, and yet God is requiring that of me. Truth would require that of me. I love other things, and in loving other things, putting other things before God, it's defrauding God. It's proclaiming something that's not true. So we have the Shema. How often are you to say the Shema? Doesn't he say when you sit down and when you rise up and when you walk in the way. So what would be the minimum if you were a Jewish person to say the Shema? 3 times a day. And let's say that I'm 50 years old. I'm actually going to be 55 years old. But how many times would you have said the Shema by the time you were 50 years old? If you're saying the Shema at least 3 times a day.
54,750 times.
So 50,000 times at least. So if Paul is 50 years old, does Paul know what the Shema says? If you've said something 50,000 times, you've probably gotten it down, right? So this is, you can go on Amazon.com, and this is a written copy of the Shema. And do you see how they've raised the letters and how you get the word witness? This is another copy. You can get a necklace with the Shema on it. That's just the first words. And if you notice on the word God, they're actually misspelling the word God because Jewish people want to be so ultra careful. They don't even want to mispronounce the word God. So instead of saying Eloheinu, they say Eloheinu. They're mispronouncing it a little bit. And this has the misspelled word God on there. You can get the Shema on this ring necklace. You can get it on a wedding ring, and that one has misspelled the word God as well. All this is Jewish stuff from Amazon. This is a picture of what's called a phylactery. Did you hear when we read it, it said bind them on your arms? So that's what a phylactery is. You put the little thing in the box and you bind it. If you go to the Wailing Wall, not only do they have phylacteries bound on their arms, they have them bound here. Why would they do that? Let it be for frontlets on your eyes. So they're doing that. If you have Jewish friends, whenever you go into a Jewish house, if you looked on the doorpost, there'll be something like this. This is just a copy of the Shema. This is called a mezuzah. And a Jewish person will put a mezuzah on the doorpost and on the gate because the Shema says, put it on the doorpost and put it on your gate. So would you grant that the Shema is fairly important to Jewish people? I mean, it's on your jewelry, it's on your doors, it's on your necklaces. You say it 50,000 times. This is what Jesus thought about the Shema. Somebody came and said, what's the most important commandment there is in the Bible? And Jesus said, Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Now, this is from the ESV. Knowing what you know about the Shema, what should we have done with that in our translation when we said, the Lord our God, the Lord is one? What should we have done with that word Lord? If we had put it in all caps, we would know that they don't do that because the New Testament is written in Greek, so they're saying that Tetragrammaton isn't there, which technically that's right, but clearly this is God's name. Do you see that? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God from your whole heart, your whole soul, from your whole mind, from your whole strength. What's interesting about that is Jesus expands the quote from might to mind and strength. So he's interpreting that for us. And then Jesus says the second one is like it. You will love your neighbor the same way you love yourself. There's no other command greater than these two. If you want to know what the Bible's about, that's what it's about. It's about the Shema, loving God, loving other people. This is the great and first commandment. Second is like it. And so, again, he's quoting. What do you find interesting about, well, when we come to the Tetragrammaton, do we say the Tetragrammaton out loud? No. What word do we say instead of the Tetragrammaton? Adonai. And you're going to ask a great question. What does the word Adonai mean? What it means is Adonai. So Adonai, this part of Adonai is the word Lord. All right? This part of the word is my. And this part of the word converts this word into the plural version. So what does the word Adonai literally mean? My lords. And there are all kinds of places in the Hebrew Bible where we could prove that point. If you want to say my Lord, it's Adoni. If you want to say my lords, it's Adonai. Can you hear the difference between that? So when I say the Shema in Hebrew, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Which one of those am I saying when I come to the word Lord? I'm saying it in the plural. Eloheinu is plural. So we talked about Elohim as the plural of Eloah. So the new part, when we come to this part, the new part is our. And this part is the word God, and this makes it plural. So what is the literal translation of Eloheinu? Our God. So when I say Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. What did I just literally say? Hear, O Israel, my lords, our gods, my lords, is one. That's the spoken Shema. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. You tell me what you find interesting about this passage, David. The word is near you, it's in your mouth, right? Persephone?
One of the things that we've seen as we've been reading this is all of this stuff is hidden. It's right in front of us and it's hidden. If
It's
we're not
hidden in
paying
plain
attention.
sight. It's hidden in plain sight. So this is 1 Corinthians 8, 4 through 6. You tell me what you find interesting. So in 1 Corinthians 8, 1, the Corinthian church is faced with a series of problems, and so they wrote a letter to Paul. And they asked a series of questions. So one question in chapter 7 was about sex. How should we think about sex as Christians? Is it okay for married people not to have sex? Is it okay if a pledged virgin gets married? And so Paul goes through, they ask the question, what about blank? And Paul gives his answer. In chapter 8, they ask the question, well, don't take my word for it. Let's read it in the text. Now, concerning meat sacrificed to idols, we know that all possess knowledge. Paul's quoting their letter. Paul says knowledge puffs up, love builds up. This is what's going on at Corinth. Corinth is full of Gentiles who converted to Christianity. Before they converted to Christianity, they lived in one of the most pagan cities in the world. There was a temple in Corinth dedicated to Aphrodite. What can you tell me about Aphrodite? Goddess of sexual love. What kind of people were they? Well, they had a law that every woman in Corinth, one time a year, would have to go serve as a prostitute. And the wages she earned from her prostitution was how they raised money for the to keep the temple up. Now, if you're a rich woman, you could pay somebody else to do it. But you tell me, what kind of society would that? So that's how you worshiped God, right? If you're a good woman, you go serve as a prostitute once a year and take the money from your prostitution and give it to the temple. Okay, that's if you're a woman. Well, if you're a man, how are you going to worship? Hey, better go sleep with a prostitute. Hey, just doing my part, right? Raise a little money here, you know. It's like, this was a wicked place. It was so wicked that in Greek, the term Korinthizomai, which literally means something like, I am a Corinthian, Korinthizomai is the euphemistic way you would say sleep with a prostitute. So if you told somebody, I'm going to go be the Corinthian tonight, what you were saying is, I'm going to go sleep with a prostitute. So what do you think somebody meant when they called a girl a Corinthian girl? So if somebody said, oh, I think your sister's a Corinthian girl, it's like you're going to punch that guy in the nose, right? Just called your sister a prostitute. This was a bad place. What's interesting about that is Christianity so transformed Corinth that we use the name Corinth today, and we think nothing of saying Corinth Baptist Church, right? You drive by Corinth Baptist Church, and you think, my goodness, you know, wow, we have so distanced that the word doesn't even mean what it meant in antiquity. But here's what they were asking about. In antiquity, in this wicked culture, if you sold meat in the marketplace, what you would do is dedicate all the meat to Aphrodite. And then you would take a little of that meat and you would send it to the temple for a sacrifice, and you would sell the rest of it. So some people at Corinth were saying, look, it's wrong to eat meat sacrificed to idols. And why would it be wrong, would you imagine? It's unclean. It's been dedicated to demon worshipers or something. And other people would say, no, it's okay to eat meat sacrificed to idols. And what was their argument? You can dedicate it to your God all you want. There's only one God, right? Now concerning food offered to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. We all know what's right. And Paul stops them in mid-sentence right there. Knowledge puffs up, love builds up. If anyone imagines he knows something, he does not know it as he ought to know it. But if anyone loves God, he is known by God. So they're asking a question, Paul's correcting. Picks their sentence back up. Therefore, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know, quote, that an idol has no real existence and that there is no God but one. We all know that. And you could see how someone would say, therefore, don't worry about it if you eat meat sacrificed to idols, because it's not really dedicated to a God, because those things aren't gods. Do you see the argument? Now, other people were saying it's okay to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Well, what about to eat meat sacrificed by idols when you're in a pagan god's temple? Would that be okay? Well, what else is going on in that pagan god's temple? You're eating a meal, and there's going to be other stuff going on in the pagan god's temple. What else is going on? All this. So do you see, some people are saying it's okay for us to eat meat sacrificed to idols, and if we do it in the pagan god's temple, it's not really a big deal because those gods don't exist. And you want to just hear Paul say, look, bud, you're just using that as a total excuse. You liked sleeping with prostitutes before. You're just using theology to justify a sinful lifestyle. But he's getting in their argument. We know that an idol has no real existence and that there's no God but one. And then verse 5, we don't know if this is Paul or if he's still quoting the letter, but this is what it says. For although there are many so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are gods many and lords many, yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom we exist and for whom we exist, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom we exist and we exist through him. What has Paul just done? He split the Shema and applied it to whom? To Jesus and God. And somebody's going to say, Paul, you can't take the Shema that talks about the unity of God and apply it to two people. And you can just hear Paul saying, what does the Shema say again? Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The only singular word in the Shema is the word Echad, one. Everything else is plural. And because the one God of monotheism is an I, equally, eternally, absolutely, who at the same time is also a we, equally, eternally, absolutely, anything that can apply to the I can apply to the we. And that's exactly his argument. No gods but one, so-called gods. Divides the so-called gods into many lords and many gods. And he divides the no God but one into one God and one Lord, God the Father, God the Son, there's a dividing line between what's God and what's not God, and which side of that line is Jesus on? He's on the one God side. So we're told to love God. We're told God is one. Now, what we're going to do for Monday is we're going to look at something else that you've read. And it's this idea of show them no mercy. And, you know, you're not going to have to do any written homework, but I want you to think about, and maybe even talk about, why is that in the Bible? It's called the Canaanite extermination curse. And it's in Deuteronomy. What's it about? How do we think about it as Christians? And that's where we'll pick it up, and I'll see you on Monday.